the cat awareness part 2, and how how I was forced to look at my motives for why I started a business, that I have about my motives for putting myself out there in a big way, and how I get to move forward now that light was perhaps shed on that. Anyway, kind of breakups and oh my gosh, this has been a rambling mess. This is part 2. Listen in. I'll get to the point. I'm going to stick with my show notes, and it's going to be good, I promise. Hang in there.
You know when someone is selling from stage, and at the end, the audience gets up and rushes to the back of the room to buy? That's a table rush. My name is Misha Z, and the Table Rush Talk Show is all about bringing you the tools, strategies, and tactics that you can use to grow your audience and inspire them to buy.
Okay, cat awareness, part 2. I'm going to stick to my show notes. It is going to be about business, and I'm hopeful there's something for you to learn and take away. But anyway, so had this ex-girlfriend 8-10 years ago, was super broken up about it. Some pictures inadvertently popped up the other day, and man, I got to look at them fondly and be like, oh wow, I'm not heartbroken anymore. I'm 95% healed from that, but my life is, as Michelle, another ex-girlfriend, told me one time, you always have that one kind of a breakup that changes everything moving forward, and you don't know when you get to have that breakup, but it's probably going to happen at some point for most people. But anyway, a friend of mine, John, was like, hey man, let me see a picture of her. He'd been asking me for years, can I see a picture of her? And I'd always be like, no, it's going to hurt too much. So the other day, he's like, hey man, you found those pictures, let me see one. And I was like, no problem. He's like, are you sure? It's like, dude, all right. I was like, yeah, no problem. I swear. She could say whatever you want about her or me or whatever. Look away. Turns out it was super anticlimactic. He looks and he was like, I'm not sure what all your heartbreak was about, but thanks for showing me the pictures. So anyway, I was like, keep in mind here that this is all about my motives with my business. It had me questioning some of my motives with my business and putting myself out there in a big way. So, yeah, I guess I could speak to that a little bit. I guess always in the back of my mind, not always, sometimes in the back of my mind, as I was, in the back of my mind, as I would be putting myself out there and wanting to do my podcast and Facebook posts and Facebook lives and social media this and social media that, and I was like, is it really, I would have this thought now and then, am I just doing this because I hope the ex-girlfriend will see me and it will make her want to reach out to me, right? Or find me or something like that. So it would be like a beacon or not a beacon, that's not a right word. It would be like trying to force feed, myself to her with the hopes that it would trigger something or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense or if anybody has ever had that experience, but now and then I'd have that thought of like, am I just doing this because I'm hoping to get some attention from her? Which is a really interesting question, right? And so, every year or so, I don't know, randomly that thought would pop up. I've been, putting myself out there, trying to do my online business for, 4 years now, 5 years now. Really 4 years in earnest, I guess, 3 years in earnest. I don't know, the timeline's fuzzy. But I I've had that thought, and anyway, let me try and cut to the chase here. So, here's my note. Regarding my business, I may have been wanting to put myself out there so she would, quote, find me, end quote. Yeah, I think that's a succinct way to say it. So after finding her pictures recently, I was like, I wonder what she is up to. So I did a little searching all the other times, the couple of other times that I had searched her. I wouldn't find anything. You know how it is every couple years. You're like, I wonder what happened to the old ex, to that particular old ex. So anyway, I was in one of those moments. All of a sudden, information popped up on her. I found her, found an Instagram of her, saw a couple reels of her, saw a little bit of what she was up to, and it was like, oh, she's just a normal woman doing normal things with her normal family, with a normal little business or job or whatever she's doing. It was just like, and I was in that moment so free, because I knew that I had been framing or thinking of her in the way of those peak pictures that I found, like peak moments of our relationship. What do you call that? Like that selective memory or euphoric recall. That's what it is. Euphoric recall, where you're only remembering the most beautiful bits, right? Those peak moment experiences. But I was like, when I found her, saw some pictures of her or some reels of her, I was like, oh my God, she is so normal. Like whatever I had been building up in my head, and knowing that I had built that up, this story, right? Of like it was like I was free. Bottom line, I'm free of that. I was like, I'm free. I'm totally free. I was like happy for her, and we'll see how long this lasts, of course. Some of you are probably saying, oh yeah, sounds like you're over it. Sure. But anyway, so I find her. I'm happy for her. She's married, I think. Whatever. I was happy for her. Able to put a good thought out there. Like, hey, God bless. Keep thriving with whatever you're doing as a normal old 40-something-year-old woman. Oh my God. Such a funny moment. It was like when John saw the pictures of us, of her and I together. It was so anticlimactic. That's what this moment was. It was so anticlimactic, and it just became very abundantly clear to me that, yeah, perhaps some of my putting myself out there the way I was indeed to I was looking for my notes. Find me. There we go. But I'm actually now free of that and can move forward fresh. So just to wrap this up, I was talking to my spiritual mentor, John. Different John. This is John G. My friend who saw the pictures was John C. John G is my mentor, spiritual mentor. But I was talking to John, and I was telling him, I was like, hey, I think some of this whole going online business stuff was for, in the hopes of being found. And he's like, oh my God, that's so interesting, and it totally makes sense. And we were talking about it and laughing about it a little bit, and he goes, it's kind of like when somebody gets sober, and they get sober for their wife, or they get sober for their kids, or they get sober for, their girlfriend or their husband or their spouse or their job. their motives for getting clean and sober. Oftentimes, those motives for getting clean and sober aren't lasting long enough to help you stay sober. It's got to be for yourself, ultimately. And a lot of people will show up to get sober and, with these, to save a relationship, to save a job, to fix relationships with their kids, all these sorts of things. And all that stuff happens. So I'm not saying that's bad. That's great. Those are great reasons. But ultimately, the main reason is got to be for yourself. And sometimes people will show up to get sober because they're hoping to find girls, in the sober communities. They'll be like, oh my God, there's so many cute girls. So there's all sorts of ulterior motives for getting clean and sober. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. But what happens is people will have that shift. They'll get sober for the wife, and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to do this for myself. And as they stay sober for themselves, oftentimes those relationships that they were hoping to save are saved. Sometimes they're not, but it ultimately doesn't matter because you're sober for yourself. So you can survive the things, the turmoil that you're trying to fix, if that makes sense. And so we were just relating that to my business journey. It's like, oh my gosh, it may be true that some of the reasons I started a podcast and have, put myself out there like that, or done the Facebook Lives that I've done, or whatever, under the guise of building a business, and maybe some of the underlying motives was to be found. It's like, hey, you know what? That doesn't matter anymore. You're here now, and you can go forward with new motives, pure service. Find new motives. What are the new motives moving forward? And I hope some people made it to this part of this 2-part series, because oh my gosh, what a rambling mess I was. Man, I listen to podcasts too of other people, and they're so succinct. And I'm like, how do they do that? I think they take more time and prep and things like that. Oh my gosh. But that's all right. Podcasting for me, oftentimes, is the start of my message. So it's a very raw riff where I get to iron out thoughts and find succinctness in my message as I start practicing the stories. I start floating a story out there, and I'm like, okay, how, what parts need to be told? So you get to be part of that. And so what were my motives for starting, and what are they now? As my final note I had, it's like when we get sober, the reasons change, and how do we want to show up moving forward? Well, our motives change, and we're here. So let's find some fresh new motives. And last note, I'm now free of all the old stuff and can move forward fresh. Wow. Love to all. Have a good day. Always good to check your motives. Sign up for my guesting guide, or download my guesting guide at guestingguide.com. My Go On Your Own podcast tour guesting guide. There you have it. Love to all. Keep working away with what you're working on. Just find fresh, new, clean motives.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.